Please, Commissioner Marvin Whitworth will lead us in our prayer and our pledge. Marvin.
Let us bow. Holy Father, we are indeed grateful for the blessings of the day, for life itself, and for the opportunity to come here and to make decisions that involve our community. We pray, Father, that as we come together, that our decisions will be best for all involved, that we will consider your will, that we will consider the needs of our citizens of the county and make decisions accordingly. Father, we pray for those men and women who protect us, for those first responders, for those who are in harm's way, whether they be local or abroad, and we pray your protection of them. Father, we pray that you forgive us when we failed you. In Christ's name, amen. Now for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. Call a roll, please, Gail.
Charlotte P. Chip Pinion.
Here.
Craig Lynch. David Jones.
Here.
Jim Averwater. Lee Bogle. Marvin Whitworth. Mike Cush.
Here.
Pettis Reed.
Here.
Rhonda Allen.
Here.
Jeff Phillips.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. This meeting of the Rutherford County Regional Planning Commission is being conducted electronically pursuant to Governor Bill Lee's Executive Order 16. I would ask for a motion that conducting the meeting electronically is necessary to protect public health, safety, and welfare in light of the coronavirus.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Please call the roll, if you would, Gail.
Charlotte P. Sorry. Skip that. Chip Pinion.
Yes.
Craig Lynch. David Jones.
Yes.
Bogle. Yes. Marvin Whitworth. Yes. Mike Cush.
Yes.
Pettis Reed. Rhonda Allen.
Yes.
Jeff Phillips.
Yes. Thank you. This time we need to approve the minutes of our May the 11th meeting. I'll call on our Vice Chair, Pettis Reed.
Mr. Chairman, I have reviewed those minutes. Everything looks like it is in order. I'll make that motion to approve those minutes as read.
We have a motion and a second to approve the May 11th meeting minutes. Call the roll, please, Gail.
Chip Pinion.
Yes.
Craig Lynch. David Jones.
Yes.
Jim Averwater. Lee Bogle. Marvin Whitworth. Mike Cush.
Yes.
Pettis Reed.
Yes.
Rhonda Allen.
Yes.
Jeff Phillips.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. We have no items deferred or withdrawn.
Actually, there is an item on your agendas. It's item 4 under C, submitted for final plat approval. That item has been taken off the agenda. As it turns out, the waiver for the fire hydrant is not going to be necessary. They will be able to support a hydrant at that location, so you can take that one off. I will say that when we get done with final plats, I'm going to request the chairman to ask for a suspension of the rules to consider one other item, the Underwood property subdivision, to add that for your consideration. It's a pretty straightforward plat, but we want to go ahead and get that. I'll explain in more detail later.
Okay. So item 6C4 has been removed. Under new business, item 6A, this is a waiver request. The item number is 204002, Dolly Allen on Joe Brown Road. The request is for a waiver to subdivide non-buildable lots due to lack of a septic soil. Doug?
Yes, sir. Thank you, and good morning, Commissioners. Hope everybody's doing well today. The property before you is located on Joe Brown Road. It's not too far from the 840, I-840. There's no interchange there, but there's a bridge over the over the highway. They are proposing, this is the result of it's more of a probate type action when they start to divvy out the land on the property. Before they spend a lot of money on any surveyors and whatnot, they have talked with a surveyor, but they know that there's going to be some tracks here that's going to be difficult to find septic soils on. So they're asking ahead of time in order to do a subdivision that has a waiver that would allow them to basically have unbuildable lots. We do have those from time to time. We don't see them often, but often enough that this shouldn't be, this isn't the first time we've ever seen anything like this. So they have, as part of their agenda packets on your iPads, you'll see they kind of sketched out just roughly what they think the properties might look like. There are some existing structures on the property. They'd have to plan around those, of course. And then based on what they find for septic soil on those other properties, they just want to be in a position to be able to divvy out the property when they decide on the best way to do it in the event that there aren't soils, and they didn't want to go through all that work with the surveyor prior to that. So at this point, that's what they're asking for. I don't see anybody here representing them. I don't know if someone may be online or not, but with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions. Right now, again, it's a very preliminary step that they're at right now with this.
Staff have a recommendation?
It's going to have to come back to the Planning Commission one way or the other because, first of all, of the number of lots, they're thinking 4 tracks. So that's going to have to come back before you anyway. But even if it wasn't, it was going to have to come back before you because of the waiver requests. So with that, I mean, I don't have an issue with it moving forward. Again, it's just, there's not going to be a whole lot that they can do with the property, I don't think. And it's zoned single family. So.
Okay.
Make motion to approve.
I have a motion and a second to approve item number 204002, waiver request for Dolly Allen. Other questions or comments? Call the roll, please, Gal.
Charlotte P. Chip Pinion,
Yes.
Craig Lynch, David Jones,
Yes.
Jim Averwater, Lee Bogle, Marvin Whitworth, Mike Cush,
Yes.
Pettis Reed,
Yes.
Rhonda Allen,
yes,
Jeff Phillips.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Gail. 6B, these are items submitted for preliminary plan approval. 6B1, item number 20-1009, Kimball Field subdivision, 80 lots on 102.88 acres, zoned RL, located along Carroll Road. Carroll Land Holdings is the applicant. Doug?
Yes, sir. Thank you. A preliminary plan for this development was approved by the Planning Commission back in April of 2019. The original design that they had at that time has been reworked to reduce the amount of paved area and cost of infrastructure. The changes that they wanted to make were going to be more than we could approve administratively, so we recommended at that time that the applicant resubmit their preliminary and bring it back through the process to the Planning Commission. We did have, as staff, several comments on the plan. Most of what I would call the housekeeping ones have been addressed. There are a couple of outstanding items, though, that we wanted to have some more discussion about here at the Planning Commission. One of them has to do with the entrance along Carroll Road, the northernmost entrance. See, there are 2 separate entrance points that Mike's pointing out there. The one we're concerned with is the one on the north side that Mike's highlighting right in that area. You can see it's very close to the 90-degree bend in Carroll Road. We had some discussions amongst ourselves and as amongst staff, and also with the applicant's design engineer, so we'll talk a little bit more about that. Also, the intersection within the subdivision, Mike will highlight that, the kind of the one down at the middle about the lots. Yeah, that one. That particular intersection, I like the fact that there's multiple ways in and out of this development, but that intersection right there, it looks like that there's several lots that might be cut off should have something happen at that intersection. Of course, Mike and I talked about this a little bit even on Friday about the fact that, you know, in any subdivision you're going to have some amount of that where a number of lots might be cut off from the rest of the development, depending on what would happen at an intersection. So I don't think we feel as strongly about that one anymore, but we do still have concerns about the one on the northern side, that access to Carroll Road. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mike to discuss in more detail.
Thank you, Doug. 90-degree road bends, they were established back in the day to go around farms. They do slow the traffic down a lot. So I'm having a little heartburn about this road connection in the close proximity to this almost 90-degree bend right here. There is a fence row that has heavy vegetation along this field. I worry that somebody comes around this corner wide as somebody's pulling out here could be a bad situation. What we recommended, and we're still open for discussion on this, but I was thinking maybe if we had the proposed road come in and line up and make this a three-way T intersection and stop conditions all three ways. I know you don't use stop signs for traffic control more than just allowing somebody in and out, but or calming traffic, slowing them down. But so that's the issue I'm having. We've got other 90-degree bends in the county, and that's given me some issues. There's another one farther to the west, but there's not a whole lot we can do with that, and it is a smoother connection there. We did talk with the design engineer, Jamie Reed of SEC, and he is inclined to say that he would rather it here as this would slow traffic down, or I shouldn't steal his thunder. I'm sure he would like to discuss it some more, but other than that, there are some suspect soils on the site. Our good old friend Ruellen and Dalton soils I believe, have come back again. They haven't finished a Tupelo Ruellen in this area. There's some Egum over here. Those are suspect players that have come back as hydric soils in previous subdivisions, other subdivisions. So that's going to be an issue potentially if it comes back as hydric soils. So we don't want our lots, our roads, anything to impact potential wetland soils. So that's the two biggest things. Oops, not that one. That I have on this one. But all in all, other than those two big hurdles to me, the preliminary is in good order. And maybe Jamie would like to discuss. I shouldn't have stole his thunder, though.
Jamie, I know you're hiding under a mask out there someplace. There you are. You have any comments?
And Jamie's always good to work with. He, like any of the local engineers, they have a long-standing relationship of working with us, and we really appreciate that. So, but we want to discuss it some more here.
Yep. Good morning, everybody. I'm Jamie Reed with SEC. Like Mike said, the two major issues and the reason why we didn't stub it straight into that was because we didn't want a thoroughfare coming through that little small subdivision. I mean, before we had it approved with one entrance over to this other side. Now we're teeing it up. We ran two entrances into, and it's just 80 lots. We didn't feel that coming straight into the subdivision for a handful of lots for a small residential subdivision was a good design. We like the traffic calming device of them still turning. And then on top of that, there's hydric soils right where that road's teeing into, right where we got the pond. Our guys out there currently doing an HD report right now, but it definitely shows it right there with that tee of that road. So that's the other reason we didn't go out there, because it's not good to have a road on that type of soils and or lots. So that's the other reason we pushed that road over. But I mean, like Mike said, if it's something that the commission feels necessary that we need to move it back over, those are the issues that we're faced with. Our thoughts, we're trying to calm the traffic, still make them keep doing like they're doing now, and the soils.
Right.
Yeah.
What we might look at is lowering the speed limit through here. We've done that in other places. I need to reach out, and maybe Doug can help you get the if there are any accidents in that corner, maybe we could look at that. But that to me, these 90-degree curves in the county give me heartburn everywhere.
I understand.
Like I said, they were developed around farm fields. So we've got one, I know, south of Buchanan Estates, just a straight 90-degree turn. It
Got two past that. You got
Right,
another
right.
90 and another
Yes.
90 right there.
Yes,
So
you do.
You got
Yes,
three
so, I
90s
mean,
within 2,000
If I had my
feet.
druthers, I'd eliminate them all and slow traffic down the best way I could before I got there. But like I said, there's a fence on this inside track that's a lot of vegetation, so it limits your view around the corner here. So
What's that
that's-
distance right there from driveway to corner?
That is, excuse me, we've had some technical
I
issues.
think it's 150 feet, Mike, 150, 170, something like that.
Right to DCPT.
Oh, the PT.
It meets our requirements. It's just,
Been on that road, Cable Road, it's that long straight shot. I mean, people coming flying down through there. I don't, if I lived in this, I wouldn't want, you got the headlights and everything, they're going to be coming full steam ahead.
no, I agree with Jamie on that. I wouldn't want traffic coming straight through there, but if we had an opportunity
How
to,
long it is, it's a one straight
I
long
know
over.
exactly where it is, but I don't care what speed limit you set there. It won't be
Well, that's my point. That's why I keep saying that they have to turn right, and that right will stop them. If not, they'll go off into a detention pond versus a lot. That's what I like. So, and people that live out there know that, you got to stop that.
Armstrong Valley Road, it runs the same way. I mean, it's, we discussed that continually. Maybe I'll be using this, but
I'm open for any suggestions if y'all see anything, but that's our
I can understand why you might want to open that into that road, but
or maybe move it farther away if we could, farther to the west.
at those tracks, those large tracks he wants to keep. It's not part of this development.
So, yeah, let me,
Jamie, the way you'd have to reconfigure like 78, 79, put a little dog leg in there to come out, wouldn't you?
they own this track one here. They want to keep that 11 acres is what
That
Jamie
was it.
said.
Say what? I'm sorry, I didn't.
You'd have to reconfigure that, what Mike's talking about, you'd have to do a little reconfiguring with 78, 79, put a little dog leg in the,
Yes,
and
sir.
then a lot of shot rock on that to build
Yeah,
it up.
you have to dig up all that where the pond at is the lowest point in that whole area.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you're going to push all the lots over, so I'm going to have to fill all those lots and put them in the stuff that we really don't want, that Mike's trying to avoid, which we're all trying to stay, the hydric type soils, that's where all that's at. And then your road's going to go right over it. But you're right, we could shove it over there and do that, but you got lots, now it's going to be in the lowest part of the subdivision in that bad hydric soil.
Well, yeah, that or moving to the west. So I'm not dead set on, I mean, it meets our requirements for separation. It just, somebody is coming around that corner faster than they should, they're going to drift over into the opposing lane.
You got to go pretty fast. You almost got to stop to turn there. I've been out there numerous times working on this. I mean, you're going down through there. You're not going to go around at 30, 40 miles an hour. You got to come and almost stop and kind of gradually go around it.
if you put that entrance right into that road, they're going to come right into that road.
Yeah, and that's what I don't like. I wouldn't like that either.
That's why we did.
So, I mean, we could work with the highway department, the sheriff's department on lowering the speed through here and maybe seeing if we can't get that property owner to allow us to clear that vegetation and the fence row, just to help with the sight distance through there.
I can't remember. You won't be going through, yeah. But I like it, all those little, I mean, I like the old country curves and stuff. They got to slow down.
It does slow traffic down, but my concern is it's so close to that curve, one car pulling out, making a right and somebody coming around that curve, it could be a bad situation.
No, that's what I said.
Yes, sir. No, sir. I mean, well.
And if they did, they'd go in the pond. That's what
But like I said, we work with Jamie, have a good working relationship with them, and as well as the other design engineers in town, so we can work something out. We can. What's that?
I know that it requires lot reduction, but when you see something like this, I had rather tie in the county road at the north end and sweep down to lot 4 and take that out of it, dedicate that L shape to the subdivision, and just rework that all together and just eliminate those. I mean, I know you lose lots in doing that, so that's why I didn't really speak up on it. Because I know you would lose a lot of lots, but you can maintain your pond. You don't maintain the 11 acres, but
He's got to have
exactly how many lots you lose. But
Yeah, we got to have those lots.
I know that. I know, and that's why I say I didn't want to mention it, because it's a perfect opportunity to take both those curves out of it. So.
Yeah. But like I said, we'll work with Jamie.
I understand lot count's important.
Or I'd be back up here next month. That's when we went from the last. Any other questions, y'all?
Thanks, Jamie.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve, subject to all staff comments.
Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the preliminary plan for Kimball Field subdivision. Other questions or comments? Call the roll, please, Gail.
Charlotte P. Chip Pinion,
Yes.
Craig Lynch, David Jones,
Yes.
Jim Averwater, Lee Vogel, Marvin Whitworth, Mike Cush,
Yes.
Pettis Reed,
Yes.
Rhonda Allen,
yes,
Jeff Phillips.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Well, Item 6C, these are items submitted for final plat approval. 6C1, the item number is 19-2030, The Springs, Section 1. This is a reapproval, 45 lots on 41.31 acres zoned RM, located along Armstrong Valley Road. Salem Creek Partnership is the applicant. Doug?
Yes, sir, thank you. The final plat for this section of the Springs was originally approved by the Planning Commission back in May of 2019. Final plat approvals, as you know, are valid for 12 months. Since this plat was not recorded in that time, their approval has lapsed, so they're asking for a reapproval of this plat. The plat is unchanged. It's pretty much, again, it's the same as it was. This is the same situation for the next item as well for Section 2, so I just wanted to bring that up for your information, but with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Still recommended approval?
Yes, sir.
Make a motion to approve.
And a second.
We have a motion and a second to approve item number 19-2030, The Springs, Section 1. This is a reapproval. Call the roll, please, Gail.
Charlotte P. Chip Pinion,
Yes.
Craig Lynch, David Jones,
Yes.
Jim Averwater, Lee Bogle, Marvin Whitworth, Mike Cush,
Yes.
Pettis Reed,
Yes.
Rhonda Allen,
yes,
Jeff Phillips.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Item number 19-2031, The Springs, Section 1, reapproval, 28 lots on 11.98 acres zoned RM, located along Armstrong Valley Road. Salem Creek Partnership is the applicant.
Yes, sir.
Same thing?
Yes, sir. Same thing. Same bat time, same bat channel.
Motion to approve. Second.
A motion and a second to approve 19-2031, The Springs, Section 1. Call the roll.
Charlotte P. Chip Pinion,
Yes.
Craig Lynch, David Jones,
Yes.
Jim Averwater, Lee Bogle, Marvin Whitworth, Mike Cush,
Yes.
Pettis Reed,
Yes.
Rhonda Allen,
yes,
Jeff Phillips.
Yes.
Motion carries.
6C3, the item number is 20-2054, David Copper. This is a minor subdivision plat, 3 lots on 7.06 acres zoned RM, located along Yergin Road and Armstrong Valley Road. David Copper is the applicant. Doug?
Yes, sir. Thank you. The applicant's proposing to shift property lines among the 3 lots. The existing residence on Lot 3 will also contain the existing barn that's on the property. Since this re-subdivision affects more than 2 lots, we cannot do it administratively, which is why it's before before you today. Staff's comments have been addressed on this. There were a couple of minor tweaks that he had to do on this. I think there was a typo on one of the plats, but he's aware of that. I just don't think the version that's on your SharePoint showed that, but he knows what he has to do. Again, it's just minor typos, but the plat itself is in good order, so we'd recommend approval.
Questions or comments?
Second?
We have a motion and a second to approve item number 20-2054 for David Copper. Other questions or comments?
Have on our iPad does not match what is up there. Or maybe it was, okay, it's just on the aerial that's different.
On the aerial are the current property lines.
That cleared up.
Yeah, the plat's that's gonna show you what it's gonna change to, yeah. Mhm.
Other questions? Call the roll.
Charlotte P. Yes. Chip Pinion,
Yes.
Craig Lynch, David Jones,
Yes.
Jim Averwater, Lee Bogle, Marvin Whitworth, Mike Cush,
Yes.
Pettis Reed,
Yes.
Rhonda Allen,
Yes.
Jeff Phillips.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Item 6C4 has been removed. Item 6C5, the item number is 20-2063, Rooker Landing, Section 2, 29 lots on 6.78 acres, Zone PUD, located off Rooker Road. Landquester LLC is the applicant. Doug?
Yes, sir, thank you. The revised preliminary plan for this property was approved back by the Planning Commission back in February of this year. This final plat does appear to be consistent with that preliminary approval. All of our comments have been addressed on this. The final plat itself is in very good order. So with that, we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion and a second to approve item 20-2063, Rooker Landing, Section 2. Call the roll, please, Gail.
Charlotte P. Yes. Chip Pinion,
Yes.
Craig Lynch, David Jones,
Yes.
Jim Averwater, Lee Bogle, Marvin Whitworth, Mike Cush,
Yes.
Pettis Reed,
Yes.
Rhonda Allen,
Yes. Yes.
Jeff Phillips.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Item 6C6, 20-2064, Rooker Landing, Section 3, 31 lots on 8.18 acres on PUD, located off Rooker Road. Landquester is the applicant. Doug?
Yes, sir, thank you. Again, this is, as far as the preliminary date, this is similar to the one we just considered. It was approved back in February of this year. Again, the plat is in good order. It's met the comments that we had. Everything's been addressed. So with that, we'd recommend approval and be happy to answer any questions you may have.
If no questions, motion to approve.
We have a motion and a second to approve 20-2064, Rooker Landing, Section 3. Other questions? Call the roll.
Charlotte P. Yes. Chip Pinion,
Yes.
Craig Lynch, David Jones,
Yes.
Jim Averwater, Lee Bogle, Marvin Whitworth, Mike Cush,
Yes.
Pettis Reed,
Yes.
Rhonda Allen,
Yes.
Jeff Phillips.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to suspend the rules to add one additional final plat approval. Have a motion and a second to suspend the rules. I guess we need to call a roll on that, Gail.
Charlotte P. Yes. Chip Pinion,
Yes.
Craig Lynch, David Jones,
Yes.
Jim Averwater, Lee Bogle, Marvin Whitworth, Mike Cush, Pettis Reed,
Yes.
Rhonda Allen,
Yes.
Jeff Phillips.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Doug?
Yes, sir, thank you. The plat that's going to be coming before you right now, and Mike has it on the screen, is the minor subdivision plat of the Underwood property along Morgan Road. Commissioners will recall, this is the property that went through the rezoning process and just got approved by the Board of Commissioners earlier this month. The property was zoned RL. They were trying to subdivide the property into 2 tracts. Since the property is not 2 acres in size, they couldn't meet the minimum 1 acre, and there was not the ability to support a fire hydrant there, so they had to keep the minimum 1 acre. So after discussing it with them, they went ahead and moved through the rezoning process to zone this property RM. This was the plat that started all that. So now that the zoning is in place and it's RM, this does meet the requirements. There's a couple tweaks that need to be done on the plan itself, but for the most part, it's in good order. I don't have any problem moving it forward. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
It's already passed this commission and the county commission?
The zoning has, yes, sir.
Very good. Thank you, Doug. I have a motion and a second to approve. I don't know what the item number is, but
It is 19-2086.
19-2086, final plat. Call the roll, please, Gal.
Charlotte P. Chip Pinion.
Yes.
Craig Lynch. David Jones.
Yes.
Jim Averwater. Lee Bogle. Marvin Whitworth. Mike Cush.
Yes.
Pettis Reed.
Yes.
Rhonda Allen.
Yes.
Jeff Phillips.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Item 6D, these are items submitted for site plan approval. Item number 1, as you can see, is the Burnt Knob self-storage request that has come before this commission several times, and I believe it'll probably create a number of questions. So without objection, I'm going to move this item to the last on our agenda so we can get the other items out of the way first. Item 6D2, the item number is 203026, Watson Barn Rental, construction of approximately 200 square foot office space and display area. These are for outdoor barns on approximately 8 acres, zoned CS, located along Shelbyville Pike. Watson Barn Rentals is the applicant. Doug?
Yes, sir. Thank you. As you will recall, this site plan was deferred back in July to answer some questions about access and some other areas of concern that we had. The plan you have before you has been submitted to our office for our review. Overall, we're okay with the plan. We don't have any real issues with the site plan in and of itself. The big issue that they're going to have to work through is going to be the TDOT access to the property. We did have conversations with TDOT officials about those entrances. Even the northern one, although it's paved, is not a TDOT commercial standard. So 1 or 2 of those entrances are going to have to be upgraded to a TDOT commercial entrance. Beyond that, the site plan is in good order. I don't see any reason to not approve this, subject to them working that out with TDOT. So with that, we're happy to answer any questions. Mike, then if you had anything further on that.
Just a few things. There is, and forgive me, this thing moves pretty slowly. There is, excuse me, some existing gravel that they're going to take advantage of. And my screen is like 10 seconds behind that screen, so forgive me if I'm looking back and forth. But it looks like the gravel area needs to be expanded to position the barns on, and potentially the this area here. They're going to lease half of this to, I think, Watson's Barns Rental, the lower half, and there is a little bit of an existing area here that they're going to take advantage of. If I can get back to the plan, it looks like they're in other areas. They don't really show the gravel area. I'm just worried if a fire truck has to come in there, put out a fire, they'll sink in areas that don't have the gravel support. And if they could consolidate them on that existing gravel area or expand the gravel area, I would be okay with that. But other than that, like Doug mentioned, the entrances are, right now, this is just a gravel drive out to Shelbyville Highway, and this one is a substandard. It is paved, but it's cracked, and it was just a access for a field.
And one thing I do want to mention about the location of the barns, and I agree with what Mike is saying. The one thing I would say is I don't expect there to be barns like that in that exact location. I mean, that whole area is going to be a display area, which we're okay with. We don't have a problem with that. I think that was more for display, just to show this is where some of these barns could be stored. So just be aware that, you know, it might not look exactly like that as far as barn storage goes. But I agree with Mike that, you know, if they could augment some of that, then I think we'd be fine with that.
So the staff's recommendation would be to approve with those comments?
Subject to those comments, yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
since the illness of the commissioner in that area, Commissioner Jernigan, I have been receiving those phone calls that commissioners are supposed to receive out that way. So I guess I have been a 2-district commissioner lately, but glad to do it for Commissioner Jernigan in his situation, whatever. But I had the opportunity to go and visit this site and look at it. And I know some of the developments we have been seeing coming up out there, and I think this site right here is going to be actually a refreshing site to see out there on that hillside. It's going to be refreshing to see barns out there instead of automobiles. And that has been primarily what we have been seeing out there on that. I know you've mentioned the fact of fire engines coming in there and sinking up. I don't know if on that hillside you're going to sink up that far.
There are, I did go out and look at it. There are some.
But that, you know, that's a possibility.
Yes, sir.
But I think that can be worked with the property owners. But I did look at those entranceways, and they are, and I think they were originally built by TDOT standards to go to where they had to go. But I think it's important that we give these property owners time now to get this going, because they have been put off on this situation right there. So I think we move on with working on this. Y'all work together, getting this done. We move this on so that we can get that happening out there. I think this will be an addition to the county that the county needs out there. Both entrances right there will be important to going there, and I think it'll be important to that area out there. So I'll make that motion with staff statements.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Motion and a second to approve item number 20-3026, Watson Barn Rental. Other questions? Call the roll, please, Gal.
Charlotte P. Yes. Chip Pinion.
Yes.
Craig Lynch. David Jones.
Yes.
Jim Aberwater. Lee Bogle. Marvin Whitworth. Mike Cush.
Yes.
Pettis Reed.
Yes.
Rhonda Allen.
Yes.
Jeff Phillips.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. And thank you, Commissioner Reed, for filling in, not only on this commission, but for the county commission, too. Thank you. Item 6D3, 20-3027, Andrew Walczek, 2020 expansion, construction of approximately 20,000 square foot warehouse building on approximately 6.5 acres zoned LI, located along Franklin Road. Andrew Walczek is the applicant. Doug?
Yes, sir. Thank you. The applicant's proposing, as you stated, to construct an additional 20,000 square feet of warehouse storage space on this property. We did have several comments on this site plan. Pretty much all of them have been addressed. I think the site plan is in pretty good order. Mike, did you have anything further? Okay. Yeah, so we'd recommend approval at this time.
Make a motion to approve.
We have a motion and a second to approve item 20-3027, Andrew Walczek, 2020 expansion. Other comments or questions? Call the roll, please, Gail.
Charlotte P. Yes. Excuse me. Chip Pinion.
Yes.
Craig Lynch. David Jones.
Yes.
Jim Aberwater. Lee Bogle. Marvin Whitworth. Mike Cush.
Yes.
Pettis Reed,
Yes.
Rhonda Allen,
Yes.
Jeff Phillips.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Item 6D4, 20-3028, Moody Excavating Office Addition, construction of 3,527 square foot addition to an existing building on approximately 12.37 acres, zoned EAC, located along Forbes Drive. OMT Properties is the applicant. Doug?
Yes, sir, thank you. The applicant's proposing to make an addition to an existing office building on the property. When the site plan was originally submitted about a month ago, we thought it was actually going to be administrative review, but as it turns out, the structure is 2 stories, which made the total square footage in excess of 3,000 square feet, which is more than we can approve administratively. After reviewing the revisions that we had for this site plan, they all do appear to be in order. So with that, we'd recommend approval and are happy to answer any questions.
Doug, questions for staff?
Just essentially, they tore down the old office in front of the building, and they're building back a new one. So it's almost on the same footprint, a little bit larger.
Thank you. We have a motion. And a second. Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve 20-3028 Moody Excavating Office Addition. Call the roll, please, Gal.
Charlotte P. Yes. Chip Pinion,
Yes.
Craig Lynch, David Jones,
Yes.
Jim Averwater, Lee Bogle, Marvin Whitworth, Mike Cush.
Yes.
Pettis Reed.
Yes.
Rhonda Allen,
Yes.
Jeff Phillips.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Gal. 6D5, 20-3033, Brickstone Winery, construction of approximately 2,900 square foot of rural retreat space on approximately 28.11 acres, zoned PUD, located along Manchester Pike. Kenneth and Sharon Wilson are the applicants. Doug?
Yes, sir. Thank you. The subject properties were rezoned by the Board of Commissioners back in May of this year for the use of a winery event venue, what they're proposing, what you see before you today. This site plan is for phase 1 of the project and does consist of the tasting room, storage, and restroom facilities. Most of our comments have been addressed. Some of the bigger ones that we had to do with, and they've changed this, there was a one-lane bridge over the existing ditch, waterway, conveyance area on the property, which they have expanded to 2-lane for two-way traffic. There was also some concerns that we had, which we talked about at the Board of Commissioners and Planning Commission meeting regarding the screening to the property to the west. They're showing overflow parking area there, but this particular phase of the project is not, they're not going to be really utilizing that. This is for your smaller events, tasting room and things like that. So we're willing to work with them on that and hold that off until the next phase. It's just an open field for one. It's actually one they're thinking about purchasing from the neighbor anyway. So we'll work with them on that western property line. Beyond that, looks like most of our comments have been addressed. This site plan does appear to be in good order. So with that, unless Mike had any other comments, we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Very good. Questions?
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion to approve with staff comments.
Thank you, Dave. Second. We have a motion and a second to approve 20-3033 Brickstone Winery. Call the roll, please, Gail. Chip.
Yes.
Craig Lynch. Yes. David Jones.
Yes.
Jim Averwater. Yes. Lee Bogle. Yes. Marvin Whitworth.
Yes.
Mike Cush.
Yes.
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 Yes. Thank you. 6D6, 20-3035, Rooker Landing Amenity lot, an amenity lot, it looks like. Construction of a mail kiosk on .72 acres. This is on Lot 57, zoned PUD, located off Rooker Road. Landquester is the applicant.
Yes, sir. Thank you. This site will be used, as you stated, as the amenity area for the Rucker Landing subdivision, as well as the location of the development's mail kiosk. Our comments, looking at our comment sheet, have been addressed. So with that, it's in good order. We'll be happy to answer any questions about the plan.
Doug? Questions, comments? Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve item 20-3035, Rooker Landing amenity lot. Call the roll, please, Gal.
Charlotte Key? Yes. Chip Pinion?
Yes.
Craig Lynch? David Jones?
Yes.
Jim Averwater? Lee Bogle? Marvin Whitworth? Mike Cush?
Yes.
Pettis Reed?
Yes.
Rhonda Allen?
Yes.
Jeff Phillips?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. 6D7, 20-3036, Walter Hill Church of Christ Pavilion Addition. Construction of approximately 4,000 square foot pavilion on 10.44 acres, zoned RM, located along Lebanon Pike. Walter Hill Church of Christ is the applicant. Doug?
Yes, sir. Thank you. As you stated, the applicant's proposing to add a 4,000 square foot pavilion to the existing church property. We can't approve accessory structures in excess of 3,000 square feet, which is why this is coming before you today. Our comments have been addressed. This site plan does appear to be in good order. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions. I will point out, and he's probably going to hate me for this, but Richie Bolin is here in the back. Used to be a planning commission member here, so it was good seeing him again. So.
Make a motion to approve.
We have a motion and a second to approve 20-3036, the Walter Hill Church of Christ Pavilion Addition. Any other questions or comments? Call the roll, please, Gal.
Charlotte P? Yes. Chip Pinion?
Yes.
Craig Lynch? David Jones?
Yes.
Jim Averwater? Lee Bogle? Marvin Whitworth? Mike Cush?
Yes.
Pettis Reed?
Yes.
Rhonda Allen?
Yes.
Jeff Phillips?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Item 6D8, the Estates of Stewart Creek. This is also a mail kiosk. The item number is 20-3037, construction of a mail kiosk on 1.46 acres on Lot 8, zoned RM, located off Stewart Creek Road. RHB is the applicant. Doug?
Yes, sir. Thank you. The applicant, as you stated, is proposing to add a mail kiosk to Lot 8 in the Estates of Stewart Creek subdivision. This is designated as a common area detention pond lot. There's only 2 parking spaces that are required because it's less than 50 lots being accessed and served by this kiosk. Looking at our comments, they've addressed the comments that we had. Just to give you an update, you'll recall that earlier this month we considered some standard changes to the mail kiosk regulations to allow this to be done administratively. So those are slated to go before the Board of Commissioners at the September 17th meeting. So you'll probably see fewer and fewer of these in the future. So with that, though, this site plan appears to be in good order.
Thank you, Doug.
Now, I'm not an engineer, but where's the parking spaces?
They're actually, yeah, go ahead, Mike.
They're just going to utilize the turnaround. Just get your mail and then leave.
So there are none.
No striped parking spots. They're just going to park. For 17 lots, we didn't feel that a dedicated parking lot for these few lots would be worthwhile. So we've done this in other places, just have them park and get their mail and leave. It's not going to be a long-term parking, just long enough to get their mail. Yes.
Subject to staff comments, I move to approve.
Thank you, Marvin. I have a motion and a second to approve 20-3037, the Estates of Stewart Creek for a mail kiosk. Other questions? All those in favor? Oops. Can't hardly break that habit. Call the roll, please, Gal.
Charlotte P. Skip Pinion.
Yes.
Craig Lynch. David Jones.
Yes.
Jim Averwater. Lee Bogle. Marvin Whitworth. Mike Cush.
Yes.
Pettis Reed.
Yes.
Rhonda Allen.
Yes.
Jeff Phillips.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Item 6D1, 20-3003, Burnt Knob Self-Storage, construction of 5,400 square feet of mini storage facility space on 10.9 acres zoned LI located along Burnt Knob Road. Stuart Conway is the applicant. Doug?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Just for a little bit of history regarding the site. Of course, we've talked about this several times this year, but just as a refresher, this site plan was deferred this year at the February 24th, 2020 meeting due to some answered questions about the amount of cut being proposed on the original site plan that he had submitted this year. The applicant has provided staff with a geotechnical study that made recommendations on changes to the design to accommodate for that cut. After significant discussion at the Planning Commission's April 27th meeting, the site plan as presented was denied. There was a revised site plan that was considered and also denied during the Planning Commission's June 22nd meeting. Since that time, the applicant's been working on this revision that you have before you today. The current submittal does reduce the amount of proposed cut to about 221,804 cubic yards. This is compared to the April 27th plan that was a shade over 244,100 and then 286,200 and a few cubic yards for the February 24th, 2020 version. So the deepest cuts appear to be about the same, around 50 feet. For all the plans that we've looked at today. When this was last brought before the Planning Commission, we had, of course it was denied, and then we had a meeting, a Zoom virtual meeting, with the applicant's design engineer, both of which are here in the room today, regarding some possible design changes that might be able to accommodate the use that he wants to do. Now keep in mind, back in 2016, this same site plan was approved, not in the shape that it's in right now, but for the use it was approved, it was just the one property, and it was approved for about a 20-foot cut. But for whatever reasons, the applicant didn't move forward with that, so then brought this back before us today. So, we were and still believe that that there are ways to design this site in such a way that can accommodate the applicant's use, but not have to have all of the cut coming off the property as they're showing on the plans that they've shown so far this year. I know that Mike probably has some additional comments. I'll let him chime in on that. I will say that on your iPads, I included some documentation from the applicant, a letter addressed to the commission regarding his plans for the property, as well as a slideshow, for lack of a better word, of different sites that he has taken some photos of regarding deep cuts and developments along those deep cuts. They're on your iPads. I'm not sure if the applicant wanted to actually kind of go through those or not. I'll kind of let the chair dictate how that's going to work, but we do have them available on the screen if need be. So with that, again, I'll let Mike chime in on any other comments, and at this point, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Doug, before Mike gets into some of his comments, you mentioned the previous plan that was brought before the Planning Commission, I believe, in June. Is this proposed plan substantially different than that plan that was brought before the Commission?
Not really, no. They did make some tweaks to it, and Mike's showing the one of the profiles there where they did make some changes to the amount of cut being proposed and how they were doing it. The total amount of cut was reduced slightly, but as far as the actual design of the site, it's pretty similar to what we've looked at this year.
As you could, Doug stated, this profile, you can pretty much see they changed the back quarter of the property. The profile used to come essentially pretty much straight back, and they've ramped up the back a little bit here. But if you look at the grading plan, it's essentially the same 2/3, 3/4 of the way back here. As Doug mentioned, after the second denial, we had a Zoom meeting and we discussed ways to make this a safer site without these deep cuts. One of my suggestions, or several of my suggestions, this is a small power line that runs through the front of the property. It's not a three-phase power line. It could easily be located at the frontage of Burnt Knob Road. That would open up all of this space to allow the detention pond to move forward. That's the way it's draining anyway. There's an existing culvert under Burnt Knob Road. My thought was, if you can bring that forward, you can bring a ramp up and then have a road go in behind this. And as you're going up, you're climbing up the road. Not a steep climb, but just a gentle climb up here, come to a landing, and you can have a relatively flat spot for the first group of buildings. And then you could also have maybe a little turnaround right here and then come up, ramp up, and then turn and go back behind them. So there's ways to make this a much safer site. These steep high walls with customers in here, it's always a risk of something happening on that. So safety is paramount to me. In our regulations in the zoning ordinance, it's Section 102, Purpose and Authority of the zoning ordinance. It states that promote the public health, safety, morals, comfort, and convenience and general welfare of the people. So I think there are ways to make this a safe development, still build the mini storage warehouses. I've worked as a design engineer for 25 years. I've worked in Nashville, a lot steeper pieces of property. There's always ways to make this a lot safer development. One of the things that we did with another mini storage warehouse that we would work on, essentially each unit has a different floor elevation. You climb up, each section comes up a third of a quarter of a foot, a few inches, half a foot, whatever you need as you climb up the road. You don't have to have the buildings perpendicular to the road. Typically, you want to take advantage of the natural topography. So you would position the buildings parallel to the road to take advantage of the way the contours are falling. So there are many, many ways to make this a much safer development. We've looked at this many ways, and from what I can tell, they're dead set on doing it like this. So, but I mean, Mr. Conway I'm sure he wants to address the commission as well. So, but nothing from our last meeting with our recommended changes to, make these wide, long, sweeping turns to get up the hill and still have flat spots to do the development. Those weren't incorporated. So that's our hang up. Safety is paramount to us. Just a long-term safety aspect of these deep cut walls.
Mike, you mentioned having several meetings, mostly Zoom meetings, with the applicant and the applicant's representatives, and made some suggested changes. Are any of those suggested changes incorporated in the site plan that's presented here today?
Like I said earlier, they just modified the back quarter of the property here, as you can see in this profile, but the front 2/3, 3/4 of it is essentially the same. We could go back and look at the previous elevations. These are all the same. And there's ways to lessen the risk in this. He has hired geotechnical engineers to evaluate this. He's talked to other people. He's got a good civil engineer on board as well. But in my opinion, as a design engineer, there's ways to make this a safe site. The 2016 site plan that you approved did not have the deep cuts. So there's ways to make this work and still make it safer. You'll still have a lot of material leaving the site, not at this level. Some of the other things that I still haven't seen, and you can kind of see what I'm talking about. This area, we might have mentioned it on the previous projects, and forgive me, I need to catch up with the we asked them to calculate how much material left the site before he got approvals, before he got the Planning Commission blessing on this project. They wrote it on a response sheet, but they did not incorporate that on the plan. And let me get back to we follow the Metro Nashville Stormwater Management Manual, and let me get to the grading sheet. You have to have pre-treatment for a detention pond. When you have water pouring into a site, you want to take that energy out and let it settle out so you don't stir up all the silt sediment that has entered the pond from previous storm events. So we don't have a pre-treatment to the pond. I was hoping they would move it down here and redesign it, but I haven't seen that yet. So that's where I'm standing. It's still pretty much a rehash of the previous design with a slight change in the back. And I want to stress safety is my major key that I'm looking for. Section 1106 of the zoning ordinance, I didn't mention this earlier. Items 1B is a prohibition of dangerous or objectionable elements. Even if we can get a great geotechnical on board, this has to be maintained forever. It's always a potential risk. Water intrusion, vegetation growing in the cracks of the rocks, loosening rocks. So there's ways to make this work and not have these deep cuts. I'm sorry if I'm rambling.
Thank you, Mike.
Behind this property is the rock quarry.
Yes.
What effect does that have on this property?
Well, the blasting technology has improved dramatically in the past 20-25 years. They've limited the size of charges. They've increased the number of charges, and so you've got smaller charges but more of them to essentially get the same rock blasts or split. So the geotechnical took that into question. He does not think that it will impact this development if you approve it as is, but constant shaking, constant water intrusion, like I said earlier, and the potential for vegetation getting in the cracks, loosening the rocks is always a concern. But like I said, his geotechnical engineer did not state that it was an issue.
Mike, on the quarry side, to the bottom, say the bottom of where we want to go to with the storage buildings. Okay, jump over in the quarry.
Yes, sir.
Is water coming out at any of those levels on the backside as the, would come out on this side?
Not that I don't believe. Let me turn on. There are some settling ponds. This pond, and forgive me if this takes a second, like I said, there's like a 10-second delay on this one from what's up on the screen. So the contours are already drawn here. They're not on my map, so I'm kind of looking back and forth. There's a little bit of a ridge here. So, groundwater can move underneath hills, and they do that in several places, and I can show you a dye trace in other places. But surface water, they have a settling pond over here, and that drains off this way, and these other ponds drain off to the north. So I don't see their water impacting this site. Surface water, it could have, groundwater could be an issue, but I don't know that. That might be an answer for the geotechnical engineer.
Water in quarries, water comes out the walls.
Yes, sir. Right.
That's what I was saying, if it's coming out.
Oh, yes. That's
at an elevation comparable to the elevation on this side.
Let's see, they are right now, say middle of the site, you're looking at 770. There's a 770 here. I mean, as farther north you go, the deeper they are in their quarry.
They're a lot deeper than the bottom of this, what we're talking about here.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So here's a big deep pit right here. And it will take my computer probably several seconds to redraw. But I apologize. We've had technical difficulties and it's painfully slow. But it's much deeper here, and even farther to the north is another deep cut. This area is more of a processing rock storage area where they bust the rock up. They're mining it, I believe, farther north in this area here. And they'll bring it up here, crush it to different sizes and process it, and then ship it out, store it and ship it out. But they are several feet lower on this end. The quarry has to follow, MNSHA, Mine Health Safety. It's like OSHA, but for mines. It's their cousin. They have, inspections people. That's all they do is drive around the mine and inspect it on a daily basis to look for potential hazards. I've asked it to do too much. I have to be polite and go slower, or the technology gremlins will get us. So, but all in all, it's essentially the same thing with a little bit of a change in the back. There's ways to make this work that are much safer than these steep rock walls.
Mike, help me understand some of these engineering reports. He has submitted some that I'm assuming, without going into the details of what these other engineers are saying, is they believe that what he is submitting is safe and addresses the concerns and meets modern standards or expectations on a site. But you disagree with those people. I mean, what do you do when you have a disagreement between engineers?
Well, I disagree on the long-term viability of it, the long-term safety aspect of it. The natural order of things is chaos, settling over time, cracks, water, seepage through the walls. we don't have to worry about that if there's not these steep cuts. Why make it a riskier site where citizens will enter this on a daily, weekly basis? Why not make it as safe as we can? Why make it a risky development is my main issue. I think the long-term maintenance of it is a big thing. One of the things we'd asked them to do is to come up with a maintenance plan, and also earlier they proposed netting along the walls. For some reason, the netting's gone away. So I don't know why that has changed. So that's also got me a little scratching my head. But it's just the long-term issues I have with that.
Mike?
Question? Mike, help me understand a couple of things. On what is submitted, the drawing that is submitted, it looks like from Burnt Knob, the entrance to Burnt Knob, you have an elevation of about 732. And then as you drive back to the back of the storage buildings, you have about a 735.5, somewhere in there. So you have about a 3-foot elevation change from driveway to the back. So here's the part I don't understand. Where they show the end of the storage units in the back, and then where they show the Profile A and Profile B text there, what's happening from the back of those buildings to the back of the property? What is that just going to be dead space, or
vehicle
Profile A, Profile B, or is that like a phase 2 perhaps? Or
no, behind the second row of buildings, I believe, is vehicle, RV, boat storage. It does on the site plan, it shows it. Okay. Outdoor storage, yes. So RVs, boats, trailers, whatnot back here.
So in that area, you have, looks like about a 750 parking area elevation, and then your excavated wall is about a, 785, 790? So
This existing contour is what we would be tying into here. That's a 796.
So about 45 feet tall in the back would be your vertical height. Going closer to the street at your first storage units, it looks like you have a gravel elevation of about, or parking elevation at let's just round it to 735. You have contours to the right of about 778. 40-ish plus feet there. And then down towards the front row of storage, you have a parking of, let's say, 733. So, and then let's say 760 in the middle. So what is that, 27-ish, 30-ish feet?
Right, right. So as you go back, it gets deeper. So
kind of 20, 40, 50 as you get towards the back.
Sir.
With the contours that you're talking about, stepping it up, stepping it up, stepping it up, what does that get us in the back?
That, I have not done that design, but if you move the pond forward, that gives you room for a road to come up gently here, turn, and go up, just back and forth gently up the hill. You can create level spots. You can increase the finished floor of each unit so it steps up with the road. You know, there's a lot of mini storage places like that. So there are many ways to make this a much safer site plan.
Another question for you, Mike and Doug. Looking at this plan sheet, there is in the far right corner a clouded note that says approximate volume of material that has removed or that was removed from the site prior to site plan approval.
That's the one that's not correct.
Okay.
I think it was 81,000 cubic yards before approvals. This is, I believe, what's the original, what's to be removed.
Okay.
What they proposed.
Proposed removal,
Yes.
if we were to approve it as is, right there.
Yes.
That plus about 80,000 that's already been removed.
Sure.
Other questions for staff at this time? I see the applicant standing. You wish to address the commission? Come forward.
Good morning.
Morning.
Stuart Conway, owner of the property here at 5940 Burnt Knob Road. My photo's getting quite thick over the months. I apologize for got a lot of information to cover. So addressing some of the things that we've discussed today and in the past, been working really hard with Mark from TTL and Bill. And, you know, we design our sites a specific way, and this is the way I wanted this site designed. There are ways to change it, but safety in the change of design to me is relative to opinion. You know, I feel that putting my clients in and around large changes in elevation would be less safe than putting the elevation changes along the perimeter where people and big trucks aren't operating and moving. So we did seriously consider, you know, design change. But that, you know, when people work outside of classification, injury obviously goes up, and we just don't feel that it would be safe for our clients to have these, you know, ramps, terraces, elevation changes in the building area. And so last Zoom meeting, we'd been working with staff, and we felt that putting the terrace, we talked about doing terraces in the rear of the property for the outdoor storage would be acceptable. So we made that change. We've taken our cut down from approximately 50 feet down to about 40 feet on this new plan. So that was the big change there, about a 10-foot change. I'd talked to Mr. Joe Gurley, commissioner in my area, and discussing things with him. He's very supportive of what we're doing. Try to keep him in the loop. He likes to be informed. As far as the netting, it had been removed because we had changed the site plan to make the change in elevation to remove and descale the top portion of the property based on TDOT's guidelines and Mark's recommendations. Once we descale the top 10 feet, as you probably see on the plan, top 10 feet is to be descaled on the top of the cut. If we feel that material possibly could be loose, we could implement the netting, but we're going to let Mark make that recommendation for us. We do feel freeze thaw is a concern going through season, change of seasons. And so for a long-term maintenance plan, actually I reached out to TDOT Geotech, Mr. Robert Jowers, and he was very informative. We worked and exchanged information emails, trying to get this thing right. And TDOT implements at least 2,000 of these similar cuts along throughout the state, and there's just no way to regulate all of them. So as far as a long-term maintenance plan, TDOT relies on citizens. If anything is noticeably different, or big piles of rocks sitting on the bottom, or something changes on these cuts, they'll be informed and then they'll investigate. I, as the owner, will be out there weekly, if not daily, and I'll be noticing anything that changes, and I'll contact Mark, and we'll go out there and see what we need to do, if anything. So yeah, our long-term maintenance plan is just to be vigilant and pay attention and watch. And the main thing is TDOT recommended is the quality of construction. If the quality is initially completed and they inspect it after it's completed and they approve it, what Mark will be doing with me, he'll be inspecting this along the way and at completion. And if all is good, then that's our maintenance plan moving forward, is just to watch it and be vigilant. As far as MNCHA, they regulate the mining, which is different. It's not really comparing apples to apples. Mines have temporary walls. They move and change, and they're not designed to be long-term. This is going to be designed to be long-term, and safety is very important to me. And so I intend to do this correct, and this is the design that I would like to see on the property. We feel it's a safe design. I encourage you to ask Mark any questions, to be comfortable and understand that this is a safe design. There are similar sites that, if you don't mind, I'd like to kind of compare. And sites, local sites in Rutherford County, neighboring Davidson and Williamson County as well. And a lot of these sites have been existing for 15 plus years. Some sites actually have higher elevation changes than what I'm proposing.
Are you going to kind of walk us through these, or what's your plan here? Okay.
This is behind the Walgreens.
Which Walgreens are we talking about?
Mr. Conway, I'm having trouble hearing you, and I know people on TV are having trouble hearing you. You don't have to take your mask off. Just speak a little louder and into the microphone.
These sites have, Mark had taken. These sites are in Davidson and Williamson County.
Mark.
Corner of Moore's Lane.
Come on up. Come on up.
You're going to have to come up here, if you don't mind.
We can kind of hear you, but the folks at home can't if you're not on the mic. So.
This was at the corner of Moore's Lane and Franklin Road, out in Franklin. And they had about a 25, 30-foot rock cut.
How high was that, Mark?
That's about 30 foot. There's one photo that I have. I should have a mark on it that's approximately 10 foot high. I don't. That you can see the building. It's taller than the building. It's a one-story building with a mezzanine, so that's probably 25 feet tall.
At the same site. Okay.
If you would, tell us who you are.
Oh, I'm Mark Herman with TTL.
While we're looking at those, let me just ask you a quick question. We had a site approval back in 2016, if I remember that date right. Have you compared that site plan to this site plan and given some type of an opinion as to which might be the safer site?
No, I have not compared the two.
Thank you.
This is McKay's Bookstore. This is at Old Hickory Boulevard and I-40 in Nashville. This cut's not as high. It's probably about 20 feet, and they put the fencing in, and at the bottom you can see a little bit of the talus buildup, but that was built, I believe, about 15 years ago, and you can see just a very limited amount of talus that was built up at the base of the slope.
Do you have extra? Do you have an extra? Thank you.
I want to ask a rather, hopefully not too stupid a question, but I noticed, especially on the Walmart or Walgreens up at the top, and I see a few on this one at the bottom, there are some fairly large stones laying there at the bottom of that picture. On the left-hand side, looks like bigger than a basketball. Are they left from the blasting and cleanup, or have they fallen off since that was done? See, there's a couple, we don't see them there, but are they falling off continually?
Remnant debris that's coming down, not continually, but occasionally.
But it could happen tonight or in the morning, we don't know.
Oh, exactly. But
Yes,
as you
okay.
can see, you know, the talus buildup is generally less than 5 to 10 feet from the base of the slope. And I believe on our plan, we have a 21-foot catchment basin allocated to allow that kind of debris to collect without being in the way of hitting somebody.
This is the Smyrna Theater, movie theater? Yeah.
That one is about 46 feet at the peak there in the rear corner. Of course, the parking lot is below the road there.
In your opinion, is a straight wall safer than a ledge for a kicker, for a rock to fall and kick out further?
Right, and that's why we put the
Catchment.
The slope coming down and having a bench, the bench relatively high, basically just to catch any soil that might be in that zone, and then have the cut itself perpendicular, or I mean vertical, so that if there is any fall, instead of it falling and hitting another bench or something and kicking itself out further, it just falls basically near vertical.
This picture you gave us, is this the one behind the Walgreens? What was the height of the one that you showed us behind the Walgreens?
I believe that was about 35 foot.
If the computer will work, I took some photographs as well. Well, go ahead.
Hey, Mike, could I ask a question here? Can you bring back up Profile A for us?
Yes.
So what I'd like to know is, on the drawing, just to help us out with stationing and everything, is the Profile A or B, either one, could you walk us through what station the end of the parking would be, where the catchment area would be, where the next slope would be? Because I think that vertical face is at the tail end of that, which is at the far end of that Profile A, which is, when he pulls it up here, we'll look at it.
Technology gremlins are at work. There we go. Okay. Like I said, this monitor, strangely enough, is several seconds behind that one. Now, are you wanting to see the profiles or the?
Yeah, well, you see where it's marked Profile A and Profile B on the plan sheet right there. Could you go to the actual profile?
Okay.
So I'm trying to look back and forth for that. So that vertical face that resembles the pictures that you're showing us is at that far right side, correct? That would be represented by that far right station number.
Yes. This is, the dashed line is the existing elevations, and this is what they're proposing.
So the vertical face runs up that right side of that grid paper.
Yes.
That's so everybody knows. So you've got the vertical face proposed on the right side of that grid paper, and then you come down a slope and then drop down an elevation. Where exactly does that parking area versus the catchment area, at what stations do those occur is what I'm trying to...
These two profiles are kind of in the middle. The catchment is all along the back. Let me go back to the grading plan.
So
The way I'm looking at it is the catchment looks like it's running from Station 4, roughly 350 to 6 to the vertical wall with the benching, and then from 350 decreasing station is where the parking area. I'm just trying to get a lateral distance as to how far away from the vertical face the parking.
Okay. They do have some dimensions. So
In other words, they're not going to be backing the RVs right up against the vertical face, is what I'm getting at.
No.
There's a buffer. You keep talking about the buffer area and then the catchment area, and I'm trying to walk along that profile to figure out where that is and how far. I think that would help with scale on how far away that is.
And I don't know that the buffer is actually shown on the profile. I think if you get a better assessment for it if you go to the grading plan and you look at basically the notes right there that are clouded, basically shows you what the buffers are.
I was trying to find on Profile A there, where exactly does that start? Does that start at the back of the buildings? Does that start at the parking area? Or
I think they have
profile start?
There's a gap at the bottom. Here's their catchment area along the sides and the back, all along here, along the edge of the walls.
So the Profile A runs the entire depth of the property.
So they've got a Profile A is here, Profile B is here.
Okay. That's what I'm trying to figure out, how far that goes. So it stops short of the pond, in other words.
Yes.
Helps me to lay out where that catchment area is versus the parking area versus the buildings they're proposing.
I think Bill Huddleston had something to add.
Very much. Good morning, Chairman Phillips, members of the Planning Commission. I'm Bill Huddleston with Huddleston Steel Engineering, and I assure you that safety is a high priority for us also. I want to clear that up a little bit, the back and forth there. The profile is just for the pad, the parking lot. All right, it doesn't show any of the catchment area or anything. If we can pull up the last detail sheet, this is what, when he pulls up the last detail sheet, this is what we're designing by. And this is TDOT's design on how to deal with these sort of areas. I think a lot of questions have been answered this morning. We are looking at basically a 40-foot cut, not a 50-foot cut. But one thing, this is the TDOT detail. This is what we've designed by. All right, you see how it shows in that catchment area, it actually slopes back towards the wall. So we've got that as a factor of safety. We've also increased our factor of safety on this new plan, which this hasn't been brought up. We have scooted the asphalt in away from the catchment area. Now we're showing extra space from the edge of our asphalt to this catchment area, and that provides another factor of safety for this plan. And that's a key difference in this new plan as opposed to the old plan. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. This is an expert. I work with him on many projects all the time. He knows what he's doing.
I'll agree with that. Yep, he's a good one. He's a good one.
Thank you.
Bill, before you leave, Michael, would you scroll down to the plan view, one that has dimensions on that backside?
Site plan.
Yeah, right there. Go to
the very back, or the.
How about the one we have on our iPads that shows the 30-foot, 10-foot, 10-foot, 10-foot from the back of the property? I think it's one more up.
Not sure. This is the existing condition one.
How about what we have on our iPads right now?
All right, I don't know.
Yeah. You've got what we have, what we're showing on the screen is the same thing you have on your iPad, but C3. Okay.
Grading sheet. Okay.
Yeah, let's see. Right there. Can you? Okay, scroll down a little bit. I want to see the backside.
Backside.
Or scroll up. No, other way, I'm sorry. Now, can you enlarge that view a little bit? I'm trying to get those dimensions clear.
These are spot elevations.
No, not elevations. I'm talking about distances. Bill, can you walk us through those distances back there?
Yes, that 30-foot dimension is an undisturbed area. That's where our trees are and are going to continue to be.
So that's the top of the hill?
That's correct. That's the top.
Okay.
Then you've got a 10-foot bench, and then you got the wall, and then you got a 21-foot catchment area.
Okay, so that dashed line, that horizontal dashed line represents the bench or the foot of the
It's the foot of the wall.
Foot of the wall, okay. All right. So and then your 21-foot catchment area, and then from there, you just have gravel parking lot where you're going to be parking RVs and boats.
That's correct.
And stuff. Okay.
That's correct. And you see on the sides is what I was talking about, where you have the catchment area and the wall is dashed, but then you see I don't start my paving till 30 feet from there.
Bill, let me ask you a question, and it's going to be similar to what I asked the gentleman here a minute ago. You were involved in the 2016 site plan.
Correct.
Why the changes? In your mind, why the changes?
Yeah.
You developed that plan, it was approved.
I did.
And now they're coming back with an entirely different plan. Why the changes?
That's correct. Here's the main reason. That last plan in 2016 had our site 20 to 24 feet above the road. And that's the reason. The client wants to get this thing back down towards the road where it's visible. A comment was made about, well, you do the buildings perpendicular, do them parallel instead of perpendicular. We prefer to have them perpendicular because then it provides better security because you can see what somebody's doing back there. If you do them parallel to the roadway, somebody can get back in there and do whatever they want in further buildings. But the main reason that this is different from that first plan is that the site started 20 to 24 feet higher than the road, and we don't want to do that. Is that correct?
I'm going to dig a little bit. Forgive me if I'm out of line. I don't think I am. But why wasn't that considered in 2016 versus right now? Why did you decide to make the change? I'm interested in knowing. The Planning Commission, the planning staff said it's a good plan, we approve it. And now the staff has concerns about the new plan. So why? What's at the bottom of I'm asking you.
Okay, what I do is I do what my client asked me to do. And my client asked me to revise the plan to get the buildings down closer to road elevation.
Did you ask your client why?
I assume it's for visibility, but he can answer it better than me.
Once again, I'm trying, as a planning commissioner, I'm trying to say this plan was approved 4 years ago.
Correct.
And we like the plan and designed the plan. This new plan is coming, and I'm wanting to get to the very bottom of why we decided to make the change. The visibility and all of those things, to me, are fairly minor as it relates to some of the significant changes that the staff is bringing to the Planning Commission's attention.
There was also a portion of that plan that had a 10% grade on it, and you didn't like that either?
If we didn't like it, why don't we present it? These are questions in my mind as a planning commissioner. I want to know. If they were okay then, why aren't they okay now?
Okay, that's a question. And I understand you're doing your job. I appreciate that. That's what we're trying to do as well.
I know, Bill. Thank you.
The plan presented today was very similar to what I wanted in 2016, but staff didn't feel that that was appropriate. And so I just accepted the change that they heavily suggested. And I wasn't 100% comfortable with it, so I just abandoned the site altogether. And now I'm back, and this is what I wanted to do in the beginning, and that's what has brought us here today.
Chairman Phillips, may I add a few things? Okay.
Why not, Mike?
I'm sorry. I know this is a long meeting. Burnt Knob Road is a 40-mile-per-hour road, and you've got people probably going a lot faster than that. So these buildings are going to look like a picket fence. You're looking through the side, you've got a short gap between buildings. I mean, it's just going to be a blur through there. Elevating the buildings, you don't have to turn them parallel to the road, but if you kept them perpendicular, you could still keep them visible to the road. It doesn't have to be at road grade to see these buildings. I've been to the sites that Mark had mentioned as well, and I took some pictures. If you've got a few more minutes, Chairman, I'd like to show these pictures. And I'm sorry, they're not in any particular order. This is, my computer's running really slow. Okay, this is the Walgreens off Brentwood area, Franklin Road. And you can see this is a pretty good sized rock outside of the netting. I don't suspect that was left there when this place was built. There's more. If I'm sorry, this computer's so slow. You've got a netting here. You've got rock outside of that. Pretty significant sized boulders. I would hate to be the insurance agent for this piece of property. Some of the talus that Mark's talking about slipped under the fence. These are pretty good sized rocks. But I also looked at where these sites were located. The Smyrna movie theater, right by I-24 and Sam Ridley, which is a State Route 266. It's a major interchange. McKay Books, right off 840 and Old Hickory Boulevard, State Route 251. Major interchange right by the interstate. And Walgreens is right at a major crossroads at Moores Lane and Franklin Road. Moores Lane, State Route 441, and Franklin Road is US 31. So these are major intersections, commercial nodes where they have to be visible. The location is key, but this one, the McKays, I mean, this is the Walgreens.
Well, the idea of the netting, Mike, is that that's what it does, is it restrains the boulders as they're coming down, so that whenever they do release at the base of the slope, they just gently roll out, if they do roll out, without bouncing per se.
This is what I'm worried about. Vegetation growing out of the rocks, pushing the fencing out. Like I said, Mother Nature finds a way.
That's the picture I like, because that shows what not to do. That shows what we're not doing.
Well, I'm sure that wasn't there when they put the net up.
Well, I was talking about that previous picture you showed that doesn't really show a catchment area. It shows the slope towards the paving.
Yeah. And
we're doing a 21-foot catchment area that comes back towards the slope.
Well, these are good examples that they're using, and I went to look at these as well. This is a boulder here that Fred Flintstone could use for a kitchen table.
Let me ask a question. I can't take a look at it as thoroughly as our staff can. But I did take a look at the thing over the weekend when I saw this on the agenda that was presented to us last week. And in my mind, I said, here we go again. How many times is this thing going to have to come before us? And I didn't see a substantial amount of change. But I think that whatever you want to call it, TDOT report or geotechnical report, made some recommendations on using gunite and or netting. And in the site plan, I didn't see that. Now you're talking about netting. Is it in the site plan that they presented?
I didn't see it this last go-round.
Why are you talking about it now since it's not in the site plan? I'm making decisions based on the site plan, and it's not in the site plan, so why are you bringing it up now? Why didn't you bring it up in the site plan? It looks like the revisions that you're talking about aren't in the site plan, and it also looks like the revision that you presented last week was pretty much identical to the one that was presented in June, and it had no netting, it had no gunite, it had none of those recommendations. That's what I'm looking at, and you're bringing something to us today that's different than that. I, as a planning commissioner, have an issue with that, a problem with that you're presenting something that's not on the site plan that you presented to the staff last week. And I may be reading that wrong. As I said, I'm not as technical as our staff is.
On sheet 3, I don't know if you can pull that back up, there is a note addressing the netting, and I'll let Mark explain that. You see it's note number 1 there under additional recommendations from geotechnical report.
Right, basically, it says that once they get the cut done, they're going to scale it, which is basically scratch it with a backhoe or track hoe bucket to release all the loosened items, and then make sure that basically surface water is draining away from the cut slope as much as possible to facilitate an atmosphere that won't accelerate weathering.
So tell me what that says.
In layman's terms. Oh.
What's that?
What the engineer just said. Tell me what that says. I don't have anything in front of me, and I don't want to turn around and read it.
Final cut slope configuration has been achieved. The cut slope should be scaled to remove any loosened materials to reduce the potential for rockfall hazards. Consideration can be given to installing netting or repairing areas or soil zones using gunite.
Okay, so that means the netting and the gunite are part of this site plan. Is that right, Doug?
It could be. Yeah. Could be.
It could be, or it is?
It depends on his recommendation at the time of construction.
Right. Okay.
Basically, you got to understand that what we did was we did three cores out there. They all showed very similar rock characteristics, but as we all know, the character of rock can change a little bit between locations. So there, even though what we saw in the core holes was very, very favorable, there might be a soil seam here or something of that sort that does need to be treated. And so just like any other construction or grading site, you treat those at the time that the work is going on to produce a safe and stable slope.
So there's a possibility you could determine that it's not needed?
Yes, there is.
Okay, thank you.
So the Smyrna Theater does not have netting, and they have parking right up almost against the wall. And you can see the talus like Mark's talking about building up at the base. And I can't imagine anybody would want to park next to that wall unless there was no parking spots anywhere. My thought is, why introduce this potential hazard over time when you can make the site safer? Make it safe the first time, stabilized slopes. You're going to have cuts, you're going to have removal of material, but the sites that I went to, I'm seeing big rocks. There's no netting here at the Malco, but this is what I'm worried about long-term. Once people start using this 20 years down the road, Mark and I have retired, we've gone to Florida, what's going to happen? There's the potential that it exists. And I'm sorry if I'm boring you with all these photographs, but there's pretty good sized rocks that made it out there. And like I said, these are located at major crossroads, major sites where visibility is key. I'm sure he wants to have his buildings visible, but the Malco Theater was an old rock quarry that was developed into the movie theater. I don't believe it had the full blessing of their planning staff, but I could be wrong. And this, it just, why introduce this risk? Why, if you have an alternative design, why not do that? Why not go that route instead of introduce this risk that, that could pop its head many years down the road?
Guys have anything else? Anybody have any questions?
I have a question for Mark, if you don't mind. Guys, refresh everybody's memory. When we talked about this several weeks ago, we talked about the fact that the stone, and this is the part that's scary because I'm going from memory. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mark. We had pretty good stone at the top, and then as we got deeper, we came into some erodible soils. Was that right?
Opposite.
It was the opposite.
Yes.
So the bad soil's on top. Okay. That makes me feel better. Thank you.
And that's why he's laying it back. He's scaling it back at the top.
Yeah, that's why that 10-foot dimension is the scaled back part of that, is to clean that material off. And then you have 30 foot past that, which is undisturbed. So you got 30 foot of undisturbed, 10 foot of cleaned off material. Then you've got the 21 foot catchment that slopes back toward the toe of the wall.
Right.
So to me, I mean, you followed everything that TDOT requires. You've done everything. I personally, and professionally, I don't have a problem with this because I know your history and know Mr. Huddleston's history. You're going to go out there and do what needs to be done to make sure this is protected. I'm worried about long-term maintenance on this site. I would like to see a plan for long-term maintenance and something to go in the record for that. And then I had another thought on that too. It'll come back to me in just a second, but yeah, this site is one that I think it can be worked. Oh, the other thought that I had was the borrow material. I still think that the amount of material coming out, I go back to should have gone through the borrow pit regulations, but I think we're all past that now, and we're worried about the site itself. But the way the site looks now, there are a bunch of different ways that you can design it, and I do agree that some of those can be changed. We can turn things around, and I'm looking at the old plan, and if I can read it right, I think there was a copy went on that side. There was an increase in the number of buildings and then the footprint for parking and material or RVs or whatever. Trailers, RVs, whatever it is, looks like it was much smaller. My eyes have failed me as I've gotten older, so I can't read the fine print anymore, but just trying to do the comparison really quick, just to try to figure that out. But anyway, that's some thoughts I had on that.
Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner Allen. I have some questions.
Yes, Rhonda. Yes.
Thank you. For TTL, in the letter, he said that they were engaged to offer limited geotechnical exploration. What does that mean, limited?
Well, in this particular case, our work scope was limited to basically providing an evaluation of the materials for the cut slopes. Otherwise, for a full-blown geotechnical exploration for a project such as this, we would have also provided recommendations for grading, which I believe are still in there, as well as foundation, pavement, grade slab design and construction and things along that sort. So this was limited mainly just to the grading aspect of the project instead of the grading in the building and the pavement aspects of the project as well.
So you may have had some additional safety recommendations you would have made?
I'm sorry?
you may have had some additional safety recommendations that you would have made?
No, the other recommendations that we would typically make for a full geotechnical project would be building foundation design and construction, as well as grade slab design and construction and pavement design and construction. So our project for Stewart was limited to the aspect of the grading and the stability of the cut slopes.
Okay. While I've got you talking, I'm going to skip to my last question, which is also for you. Are there any additional precautions that we could take right now in order to make this site safer? You know, I know in the wording on the plan it says that depending on what happens next, you could potentially recommend the netting. Is that the kind of thing, just as a safety precaution, that we should just go ahead and require?
I really don't know if there's anything that you really can do. It's going to be basically what conditions are exposed at the time of the grading occurs. And if we're involved in that, then obviously we're looking at understanding the geology in full depth when it's exposed a little bit better and making any appropriate recommendations for treating what we think will not perform satisfactorily long term.
I appreciate your patience with laypersons on this committee, as I am one of them. So I guess my question to you then is there a downside to us just requiring the netting regardless?
I think there's downsides to anything if you want to look at it that way, but I've done several large construction projects where we had the same kind of information, we made the same types of recommendations, and basically as the grading is occurring, if the owner and the grading contractor use good judgment and good procedure, you see the things as they're evolving, you make the appropriate changes to what you're doing or enhance the improvements that you're going to make with fencing and other things of that sort, but that it can be done successfully done at a very good final product if all team members are working together simultaneously.
Okay, I guess then that kind of goes into my next question, which echoes Mr. Vogel's, which was the long-term maintenance plan. One of the things that I read said that in terms of TDOT compliance for this kind of construction, that basically you rely on the public to monitor. And the owner there said that basically he was going to self-report any changes. And so my question to you then, I guess, is kind of twofold. It's along the same lines of what happens if this property sells to someone else? What sort of guarantees do the citizens of Rutherford County have about the long-term maintenance? What are some recommendations that you as an expert can make, or obligations that the owner can make, so that we know that the citizens of Rutherford County are protected long-term with this plan?
I don't know that there's any recommendation that I can make, because basically you're going to have talus build up with time, and it's the property owner's responsibility to make sure that the ditches are clear so that they can do what they're supposed to do. And the rate of talus buildup will be dependent on a lot of different conditions, including the weather and the quality of the rock. It could be, and if you think about it, you don't see too many TDOT crews out on the side of the road clearing talus ditches. So usually they're designed by TDOT to have a very nice service life, so that the maintenance and operations cost isn't exuberant, just because those are what those guys have to do.
But I guess we've all also seen like rock slides on 840 and on Montego Mountain. I mean, it happens. So that's just the kind of thing I'm trying to, anticipate for.
Well, and the one thing that I can tell you, that the bedrock that we're looking at is a certain formation called the Lebanon Formation. It's very thinly bedded and fine grained. And so usually, well, I'll say in most cases, the big rocks that you see sitting on some of the previous photos that we saw from the other facilities, you're not going to have big rocks like that. It's going to be mainly 2-inch or 4-inch pieces or smaller, and so you're not going to have a lot of big rock, and it will just be an effort to keep those ditches clear. And I don't know how long it's going to take for them to fill to the point that they need to be clear. cleared, but I would say it's going to be more than 4 or 5 years.
And then my last question is for Mike, Mr. Chairman. This goes along the same lines of what Kush was asking you earlier, and that was trying to follow the elevation changes. The drastic elevation changes look like they really began to happen after the buildings. Is that correct?
No, it's, you still have some changes before, not as deep of cuts. Let me get back there.
Well, so as you're getting to it, my question is, do you have a higher comfort level with the section that includes the buildings and not the back half? Is there some part of this plan that gives you more heartburn than the other? Because again, as a layperson looking at it and trying to follow the elevation and the cuts, it looks like the deeper slope happens on the back.
Well, let me go to, I don't know if you can see the image I'm showing on the screen, but there's some big boulders sitting down at pretty low elevation, not a steep high wall here. These probably fell after that rock wall was built at the Walgreens. So my big concern is, if you don't have to do this, if you can design this another way, why introduce this risk? Why bring this on, this potential risk? The other sites that we used as an example were by major crossroads, major commercial hubs, where you wanted to have a Walgreens at this intersection. You wanted to have movie theater at this interchange and shopping malls. So I mean, these are some big boulders that fell at pretty low, low height of a wall. So why introduce risk when you don't have to? That's my question.
I don't have any more questions, Mr. Chairman, but I do have one comment, and that is, I will let you know, as a citizen of Smyrna who enjoys that movie theater, you will almost never see anybody parked up against that rock. That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Allen. Anyone else have any questions for the applicants?
Unfortunately, I have some questions we'll need staff and everybody up here to comment on. During recognizing that these are underground, unseen conditions that are going to be faced as this is excavated, what process is there to inspect, be able to change, re-engineer, and most of all sign off and guarantee that anything that is seen can be corrected and made better?
First of all, I can't guarantee anything because then I have no liability insurance. But basically, on large cuts like this, what you do is you're watching them. They're starting at the top where the cut is the deepest usually. And so you're basically stepping down 10, 15, 20 feet at a time as they're removing material. And so that gives you a great opportunity to make changes in shot patterns and things of that sort, as far as the blasting goes, as the excavation is proceeding. And that also gives you the ability to, if there is something that needs to be repaired, you can make the repair while you're still at ground elevation in areas around you, so that you're not basically having to make a repair that's 20 feet, 30 feet up in the air.
So, Mike, is part of that process where an engineer is on site to observe what is happening on a regular basis? Is that part of our county requirements, and how do we know that that requirement is being followed?
There are no county requirements for private property. I mean, it's we do not have anything in saying that Mark has to be on site while the construction takes place, or any geotechnical. I mean, we can make that recommendation, but there's no rules that say we have to have a geotech on site.
So is there any way to make a requirement that and then an inspection be done at certain stages of this, whether it's every 10 feet a cut or something along those lines?
It would be up to the owner and his engineers. I mean,
My next question is going to be about an annual inspection by an engineer. A lot of the concerns are about weathering and trees and that sort of thing. And I'm assuming then if we don't have the requirement for an engineer's inspection during construction, then we have no requirement for an annual inspection by a qualified person to say, hey, you have this developing. And the reason I say that is I know that when you see something every day and it slowly changes, you don't notice the change. But if you're there and that's your business and you are, whether periodically from year to year and you're documenting what is there, you see things that can develop over time. So that sort of thing would make me feel more, those two things would make me feel more comfortable. Having an engineer involved during the construction process and an engineer involved on a regular basis doing inspections. The county has no requirement for that. Does the owner of that property have any solution to meet that concern?
Mark will be a part of the construction process, and we can absolutely do an annual inspection if we need to. I mentioned freeze thaws being probably one of the most problematic issues, and so maybe it's spring inspection. We could do an annual spring inspection if we needed to. Again, being on site daily, personally, I think I'll notice changes. And Miss Allen, to address your comment, I have 3 young sons, and it'd make me proud if they took over my businesses one day when I want to go to Florida too. So, yes, that's if we need to, we can do that. Sure.
Any other questions for the applicant or the applicant's representatives while they're up here?
Mike, this is a,
thank you.
We want Mr. Conway to be able to use this property, but we also got the safety issue here. Is there any happy medium where we can get together and raise the elevation not to the top like when he first came?
Oh, yes, sir.
We can bring it
Yes,
back
sir.
down and work this out where it's satisfactory to both parties.
The plan I was talking about, moving the pond forward, having a road wrap around it, and gently, I'm not talking steep grade, I'm talking about a flat drive coming up the hill. You're still going to have a tremendous amount of cut material coming out of here. You're probably still going to have some high walls, some pre-split walls, but you don't. You won't have the level of this amount of cut that this plan proposes. So we proposed something. They came back with a quarter of the change. I would strongly say, and I've been on the soapbox for a long time, but safety is key, it's paramount. If I'm going to call, if I have geotechnical questions, I call Mark. He's top notch. If I've got work needs to be done, I call Bill. He's top notch engineer too. But I just can't get over the fact if we can get around not having these deep cuts, make this as safe as possible. Why don't we do that? Why don't we do that?
I have a question. Well, we want to make this work, but we want to feel comfortable about it and have Mr. Hughes feel comfortable. I think this is a good use of this property, but we do want it to be safe. And the question came up about liability, so I have a question for Mr. Christian about, whatever plan that goes through, if a rock falls on a person's property, or if a rock, heaven forbid, a rock fall on a person on this property, what's the liability?
That's a question that this commission often asks me, is if a plan is approved and it ends up not being the safest plan that could have been conceived, what happens if somebody, a taxpayer, is injured? I often tell you all that a person can sue for anything, and they frequently do, particularly in this litigious nature of our society. The county, as a governmental entity, does have certain defenses that could be raised. For example, that we are immune from suit for certain discretionary decisions that are made. However, there's often exceptions to that immunity when considering the implementation of laws and ordinances and making decisions to that effect. So I can't say today whether or not the county would in fact be immune from that type of suit if it were to be filed. With that being said, this is the policy-making body of the county government when it comes to planning, and you have your expert staff that are recommending things to you. You also have a property owner here, and there are also possibilities that lawsuits can be filed depending on this decision of the board. So I think that it's the deliberations and the discussion that's been going on is very good. I do think that ultimately it's this board's decision as to whether this plan as proposed meets the intent and purpose of the Rutherford County zoning ordinance.
Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Nick. One question before I go into a potential motion. Mike or Doug, have you been out near the site?
Yes. Yes, and my staff, yes.
My question or my concern is, should we allow the amount of truck traffic on Burnt Knob? It could be in the thousands of truckloads entering Burnt Knob. So my concern as an engineering background is, have you seen any rutting or degradation?
Not so much. The highway department recently resurfaced the road, so they've made improvements to it, added some shoulders, so it's got a new layer of asphalt on it. If this site plan or any other site plan were to be approved, we typically require that they obtain a road connection and performance agreement with the highway department, and also post a surety that if the existing county road is damaged in any way, it be repaired by the developer, or we will call the surety and fix it ourselves.
That's where I was going ahead, was if we needed to have him post a bond of some kind in
Yes,
case.
sir. That's typically what we require these days.
That's automatic?
Yes, sir.
So I don't have to, I can scratch that off my checkbox?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Let me ask you this. Is the visibility such on Burnt Knob that they would need to put a safety, a flagman out there if they're running? Because, I mean, here's the math. I think this is the math. If you have an estimate, if you're going to pull approximately 222,000 cubic yards of material out of here, and the average dump truck holds about 12 cubic yards, they say 10 to 14. I'm going to just split it down the middle of 12. If my math is right, that's over 18,000 trucks.
A lot of trucks, yes, sir.
So is Burnt Knob dangerous enough, or is there any curves close to this site where we should?
There's a gentle curve to the west, but you got to remember that Rogers Group is right next door, and their driveway, they're coming in and out.
So same situation?
Same situation,
okay.
Yes, sir.
All right.
And the top of the hill, they do have their proposed driveway at the top of the hill, so the truck driver could see pretty well the traffic coming down Burnt Knob.
Mike, I don't mean to interrupt, but I've been down Burnt Knob Road not during rush hour. And that's when, and yes, it's well paved, but it is high off the ground. And you said they put shoulders.
Well,
I
they put
didn't
a
see
little
them.
bit of a paved shoulder, not
It's
the 4-foot shoulder that they need.
Narrow road. It's well paved, yes, but, and those trucks are constant, and they are large trucks on a narrow road. So I have been frightened at times going down that road just because of the large trucks.
Can I ask, if we were to grant this as is, how many months or years do you anticipate being able to excavate and move all that material off-site?
With the adjusted number on the spoil material, we, back in June, I stated, I believe it was 17.82 months for that material. That time should reduce that amount of percentage.
Okay.
So ideally, 18 months or quicker on that.
Okay. So I'm gonna prepare a motion. We'll see what happens. Here's my thought process. All right. We ask why the change, and the change is, my opinion, is because he wants the fill material, right? It's his property. He can do with it what he wants to a limit. So he wants the dirt. It's a valuable asset. He wants to move it and use it for fill and other developments that he's got going. I get that. The design, I've seen rock cut faces all over the mountain estates up to 100 feet high. And the biggest one that I've seen around here is certainly the one at Smyrna at the movie theater. And there's always a concern. And Mike has a concern, and they're all justified. But you know, a rock can fall off a 10-foot cut just as well as it can fall off a 50-foot cut. These guys, Mark and Mr. Huddleston, have put together a design that has a lot of buffer and a toe that dips down 20 feet back towards the slope as opposed to away from the slope. And we're talking about storage buildings, not a high trafficked area, not homes. So, you know, occasional rockfall, you know, may not cause the damage other than a thud in the 21-foot containment zone, and that would be it. Remember, we have to inspect detention ponds. Member Everwater said we should do an annual inspection of the rock wall, and I would agree with that. I think we need to enter that as part of the, I'll enter that as part of the motion, that we do an annual geotechnical site visit for the integrity of the wall. But here's ultimately what I'm going to land on. Mark is a professional engineer. Bill Huddleston is a professional engineer. They've sworn an oath to the safety of the public. And every time they do a set of plans, they put a stamp on it, and they have to put their signature on it. So that, to me, is the tantamount message or signal that they're giving us that they stand behind the design and the project. It's almost a blood oath. So for that reason, I am going to make a motion to approve with the added addition of an annual geotechnical inspection of the wall integrity. The question was, does that add the netting? A netting can go two ways, Craig, and I'm going to again fall back to the professional engineer and the geotechnical. That is something you really can't determine until you peel away the onion. So the integrity of that stone could be really good, and you don't need the netting or the gunite. I'm not a big fan of the gunite anyway, because I think that's just a Band-Aid on top of a patch, because you get water behind a gunite, you get more problems than you do natural stone falling off. So I'm going to leave that up to the decision of the geotechnical engineer as to whether a netting, full or partial, or spot netting is needed. That's my motion.
I'll second that motion, but with comments of my own. The borrow pit and the amount of material has always been something that I've been concerned about, and the volume of trucks and then the time frame of being able to get that material removed. But with this plan and as well thought out as Mark and Mr. Huddleston have both done on their respective ends and their stamps, and being a licensed engineer myself, I believe that they've done everything that they can to provide a safe environment for this type of facility and still meet the desires of the owner to be able to pull out that much material. And I felt more comfortable with providing oversight during the construction activities, developing a long-term maintenance plan and inspection, and then also having incorporate the common practices of the DOT, and this is on a private site. So I support this site, and I did second that motion, but I also I don't want to go back in the meeting too much, but I also time and energy on that Cairo Road geometry, because that still bothers me. It's something we've done before, and taking those 90-degree turns, we had an opportunity there, and I'd love to see energy placed on those kinds of things as well. So that's something that's still in the back of my mind, just bothers me that we had an opportunity that we missed there, and you know, with funding limitations and things that we can't charge for subdivisions to be able to, we can do turn lanes and traffic signals all day long, but we missed a real opportunity to straighten out a geometric issue there. But I don't want to go back on that. I do support this one, and I want to just felt like I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve item number 20-3003, Burnt Knob self-storage. And other comments and questions?
And Chairman, to be clear, I would amend my original motion to include the second additional comments for my original motion. I didn't say that right, but I'm going to add his opinions to my original motion. Does that make sense?
It makes sense to me. Is that okay with you, Lee? Okay, now we're still open for other comments.
I've got a question, Mr. Conway. You still back here? I got a question. If we approve this, are we approving something that an insurance company, and I'm assuming you are going to have insurance on this property, are we approving something that an insurance company can come back in and say, I'm not going to insure this as it is, you're going to have to make these changes?
That's a great question, but not one that we can even come closely to answer, but it's a good point. Other questions?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Commissioner Allen.
Just for a point of clarification on the motion, I heard Lee mention the long-term maintenance plan. As Cush amended his motion, did he include the request for a long-term maintenance plan?
Yes.
Very good. Thank you.
Yes. Other questions or comments? I can't make a motion. The motion's already been made, but I have spent a little time on this weekend, and the reason that I did that was simply because this thing keeps coming up. And I don't want to spend 2 hours every month dealing with the Burnt Knob storage unit. And here are some points that this planning commissioner has made, or in my mind. Some of these may have been addressed, but I don't think fully. Number one is the safety issue. I can't get around that. Potential hazards still exist from rocks falling from excessive heights, and I still have concerns for the long-term safety and maintenance of this project. And the other is the geotechnical report. There was some mention made, and that's the first time that I've seen that, it was today, on netting or using gunite. But it's a suggestion, so they don't have to do it if they don't want to. That's still a problem with me, and that would be a recommendation in my mind that I'd almost require. The staff has questions and concerns about stormwater issues and regulations. I'm not sure that those were addressed. I I haven't heard anything about those mentioned here, and I think they were brought up and should have been addressed in this site plan, and they weren't. The previous 2016 plan called for a 20-foot cut, and to staff and to this planning commissioner, that is more accessible and would still accommodate everything that the applicant wanted. Thus my questions as to why that was not acceptable now, since it was acceptable back in 2016. And the revisions that was presented before staff and forwarded on to us as commissioners last week showed minor changes and recommendations. And if you look at it compared to the one that was presented, I think, back in June, it's pretty much an identical plan. So to me, I'm looking at the same thing that they brought in June. Minor changes, not major changes that the staff has been recommending time and time again. I understand the motion, and I see nothing wrong with it, but let me say that this planning commissioner is going to vote no on that motion. Any other comments?
Phillips, you said, I'm not sure I can add to that, but there are a lot of engineers that have said a lot of different things, and which I am not an engineer. But as you said, I would have liked to have staff comfortable with it, and would have liked to have had more of a compromise. So I too will vote no, since upon the safety issues and the staff not being comfortable.
Other comments? We're ready to vote. We have a motion and a second to approve item number 20-3003 for Burnt Knob self-storage, with a lot of conditions on that motion as well. Call the roll, please, Gal.
Charlotte P. No. Chip Pinion.
Yes.
Craig Lynch. David Jones.
I would vote yes.
Jim Averwater.
Yes.
Lee Bogle. Yes. Marvin Whitworth. Mike Cush.
Yes.
Pettis Reed.
Yes.
Wanda Allen.
Yes.
Jeff Phillips.
No.
Motion carries.
Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, we've had a long agenda, and I will repeat what I say at most meetings. Your patience, your attendance today, and your input has been very, very valuable. And this is one of the last agenda item that we just talked about has been one of the most controversial that have come up, and whether you voted yes or voted no, the wishes of this commission have been will be carried forward, and I do thank you for all of your input and your time, and I know staff does as well. Our next meeting is scheduled for September the 14th, and that will be a 6 p.m. meeting here. And staff, do you have any other reports or any other items?
No, sir.
Anyone else have any input?
I just wanted to tell staff, thank you for your diligence on that. I know that was a tough one we've seen over and over again, and you all presented everything that you could, and we appreciate all that information to make our decisions.
Well put, Lee. Good job. Anything else? Once again, thank you for your attendance and your participation today. We are adjourned.